right, welcome back to our weekly reset here. We're focusing on tools and strategies that you can fit into your busy day to support your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. The goal is that you have these little 1 to 2 minute routines and tools you can use to help reset, help with the stress, support balanced hormones, and just improve your overall daily energy, focus, clarity, so you can function at your best and do what you need to do for your life and for your family. So, as always, reach out to me, Miriam, your holistic therapist. If you're watching this later, you don't know who I am. And I can support you. I can get you the PDF guide. And of course, we can always set up a one-on-one session if needed to go through more specifics. Okay, today we're going to share some more tools to support you. Okay. Last time we talked about, our daily rhythm and what little things we can get into that rhythm so we can support our mental and emotional well-being, our hormone balance, our adrenal health, things like our metabolism. As always, the reason that I like doing these sessions is number one, that you're getting the encouragement and the support that you need, even when things are hard, when you're busy, when you're stressed. That's the right type of support can make all the difference in the world. It's okay if you forget to do some of the things. It's okay if sometimes it's hard. That is normal. That's why we're here to support and encourage each other. And then number two, so that we can practice these little tools and shifts that support not just mental, not just physical, but the intersection of where those things come together, because we are a combination. If there's something going on mentally or emotionally, it's going to impact physical. If there's something going on physical, it's going to impact mental and emotional, right? So it's supporting that together. And that's what we talk about when we do these strategies. So we talked about a lot of this last time, just knowing and understanding when your system is dysregulated, because that little ding ding, the identifying when that's happening can help you know, oh, okay, something's a little off. I need to do a quick reset. I need to take 1 minute and do some of that deep breathing, or get myself outside, go sit or lay on the grass or the ground or something and do a little bit of a reset. Or depending on where you are, maybe it's just the mental, emotional, close your eyes, breathe, pray, use your affirmations, use tools like the breathing that I just sent you guys, things like that. Okay. So that is key. And always remember, as you look at even right now, you can probably have a general idea of what your next 5 to 7 days are going to be. You might not know every second, but you're going to know generally, I'm going to be at work at these times. I'm going to be with family at these times. I'm probably going to be prepping meals at these times, right? I know that I'm going to wake up in the morning and do these things. And I know before bed, I'm going to do these things, right? Those are called your routines. And we've talked about this, but just a reminder that as we go through these strategies here, I want you to think about where in those routines do you have 1 minute that you can add before or after? Like you're waiting for your coffee to brew in the morning. Is there one of these tools that you can implement in that time to help regulate your nervous system, reduce overall inflammation, and support your body's ability to have balanced hormones, healthy cells, balanced blood sugar, all of those things? Because when those things are supported, then our system can repair better and bounce back quicker when maybe there's some stress or something else that happens that is throwing things off. Okay. So this just kind of talks about the regulated versus dysregulated. We talked about this last time, but I just want to highlight it for a second as a reminder. When it is properly regulated, we're going to have better stress modulation, better ability to handle stress. Will we be perfect? No, absolutely not. We're human, right? Remind yourself of that. I am human. I'm not going to be able to do it all perfectly. That's okay. You will have better neurotransmitters. This is neurodivergent, but this is about what's going on in our brain. The chemicals in our brain act kind of like hormones. That's our serotonin, our dopamine, things like that. So being able to have better balance with that is huge for our focus, for our mood, for our clarity, for our energy, for our motivation. Okay. And then what's going on with stress or trauma, those kinds of things are always going to be factors in the ability to not bounce back, but to move through those stress and trauma in a healthier way is going to be connected to what's going on with our nervous system, what's going on with our different systems, our brain, our central nervous system, our hormones. Immune system is affected, obviously. Our sensory system is going to be affected, right? Anybody else have those times where just like everything is your own hair is irritating to you, or the clothing, just any sensory input, sound, noises, textures, lots of different things just are constantly irritating you. That's a sign that something's going on with the nervous system and the hormones, probably. Usually it's both. And we need to think about what can we do to help reset that? How can we help that system to stay better balanced? Because then usually there's less sensory overload. And then, of course, the diet and inflammation, nutritional piece is always going to be important. So we usually will talk about some things for that as well. We talked about the reset last time, how to recharge, what nutrients and things are going to support the system to recharge, what things like grounding and nervous system support will be helpful as well. We went through that. And then our daily stress relief, daily habits. Rest, of course, and helping our adrenal system are part of that, which we talked about when we kind of went through these ones here and how that is connected, that brain and that adrenal system, endocrine system, hormones are interconnected. So also want to kind of touch on this for just a moment here. So with our nervous system, we're talking about our brain and our spinal cord and how that's connected to the different systems in the body. I like how this shows sort of that interconnection. So our cognition is part of it, right? And with that, there's an interaction between the cognitive and the emotional regulation. Have you noticed that when you're stressed, especially really stressed, it's really hard to think logically? Why is that? Well, there's a kind of an analogy depiction that I like where you take your hand and you put your thumb across like this and you close over top. And this kind of represents the brain. We're just pretending this represents the brain. But this part here represents our frontal lobe, which is protecting the deeper inner parts of the brain, like these things, the thalamus, the limbic system, the neurocortex, all that, right? So when we have the frontal cortex online and it's active and it's activated and it's regulated and we have our serotonin and things that we need properly, what it does is it kind of is a filter for what's going on with our limbic system, which is our emotional center of our brain, and lots of different things that are going on deeper in the cortex of the brain there. What happens when there's stress or trauma or lack of sleep or just a lot of inflammation in the body is this frontal cortex can go offline. It can become almost dormant in a way. So then what's happening is we have no filter for what's happening in this central cortex of the brain with all the limbic system and everything. So what it creates is a really hard time being logical, a really hard time remembering what you're doing, a really hard time being focused and motivated and keeping track of what's going on, staying organized. And it creates this chaotic feeling inside. It creates more anxiety, of course, and it contributes to just difficulty being regulated overall, sensory overload, dysregulation of hormones, more cortisol and stress, more fight or flight response, less of our dopamine and serotonin that keep a better balance, right? That's what happens. So that's kind of an analogy for what happens when stress and things are going on. So when we're using these tools that we're talking about in these sessions, what we're doing is we're working on reactivating that frontal lobe to help filter and help keep a better balance so that limbic system isn't running this show and creating this chaotic, frazzled feeling. Okay. That's what we're wanting to support. So there's that interconnection between cognitive and emotional. Okay. There's an interaction, obviously, between our physical and our sensory perception. There's an interaction between our different anatomical functions and hormones and our stress resilience, which we just did, as pictured by that, right? And then just obviously our overall vitality is impacted by those things. So there are some nutritional things that we can do, and we also have talked about things like that reset strategy with the deep breathing as well. Here's some things to keep in mind. When you notice that that system is dysregulated, when you notice something is off and you have that irritability, you have that frazzled, chaotic feeling, there are some nutritional things that can help. Instead of reaching for the junk food, the fast food, the fried food, the chips, the crackers, the cookies, the whatever it is that you tend to reach for, we all have things that we gravitate towards. You want to fuel your body with high antioxidant things. That's what all of this pretty much is. As always, I've talked about it before. If you are going to reach for the dark chocolate, you want to, number one, put it with protein. Always pair it with protein, okay? Whether that's going to be pumpkin seeds or chia seeds or something along those lines, or nuts and seeds, or some other form of protein, like we've talked about doing like a Greek yogurt or a coconut yogurt or something, with some protein powder and chocolate, you can put chocolate with it or whatever, okay? A chocolate protein shake, there's lots of different things. And number two with chocolate, make sure you have quality, high quality. Even within certified organic, it can be tough because the facilities where it's processed, there can be some heavy metals. So you want to look on the package to see certified organic and heavy metal tested, if at all possible. That I know it can be tricky. Later at the end, we can talk about if you need me to send some ideas of like where you can order online with better choices, but we do the best we can, right? Nothing's ever perfect. And that's why I often recommend, I don't have it over here, but I often recommend that mineral dropper one, because one of the things that does is it pulls out toxins and heavy metals. And if there was some pesticides on some foods we ate or something, it helps pull that out when as much as possible. But of course, number one, we're going to try to avoid as much of that as we possibly can. Green tea or high antioxidant teas like that have certain things like the EGCG that can improve serotonin and reduce anxiety and reduce some of the cortisol. Now, green tea, do you have to have protein with it? Not necessarily. Usually it's fine on its own, but be careful about not putting a ton of honey in it or sugar or something like that. Okay. And people like matcha. Matcha is good, but be careful because a lot of times there's sugar with it. So you want to watch out for what is added into it. If you like matcha, I recommend to put a little bit of like vanilla protein powder with it or something like that. So you can have a little bit of protein in there and support hormones as well as metabolism, blood sugar balance, all that. Same thing with bananas. And actually, bananas that are just slightly green, not like green, but just a little bit, have less glycemic index, have less blood sugar issues. Again, pair it with some protein. One banana is plenty for most people. You're going to amplify your benefits when you pair it with nut butter of your choice, or in a protein shake, or with nuts and seeds, or sliced on like a smoothie bowl with protein, antioxidant things like berries, grapes, very high in serotonin support, resveratrol, say that 10 times fast. Again, avoid pesticides, certified organic or better, farm fresh. If you have blood sugar problems, protein, 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 protein. Protein, seeds, avocados, omegas, we've talked about those. So when you're reaching for your snacks, you want to use combinations of these kinds of antioxidant things with proteins and aminos and omegas. Okay, proteins, aminos, antioxidants, omegas. Can we make an analogy of that? Like an acronym. Proteins, omegas, antioxidants, and aminos. It's not, yeah, it's hard to make one, but that's okay. Okay. Now, that gives you some ideas and things to fit into your meals and snacks. And then talk a little bit about, we talked about regulating the nervous system and how stress has an impact, right? So you can kind of see here the domino effect. There's some kind of oxidative stress that's going to impact the liver and the mitochondria. That's where it kind of starts. Those two things are usually the big ones. That inflammation will domino into liver issues, probably on some level, can affect a cardiovascular system as well as the nervous system. And all of those are basically feeding into nervous system dysregulation, which between the nervous system and the mitochondria issues, to my understanding, that's basically what causes autoimmune, outside of like a genetic component that can be part of it. And then all of that is kind of feeding into the nervous system issues, anxiety, and hormone dysregulation. When the mitochondria are having issues, this is kind of a depiction of what's going on. If it's having issues, unhealthy, here we can please zoom into that a little bit. It's going to affect what's happening with metabolism, blood sugar, storing of fat, that oxidative stress, inflammation, and hormones as well, even including the thyroid. It's not all diet. The funny thing is, people blame like liver issues on alcohol, which it does, but it's also the stress. It's also the trauma. It's also inflammatory things coming in the system, which are often nutritional, but it can be environmental. Okay. So some people are just shocked that they have these liver issues. They're like, how did this happen? Viruses can cause liver issues, lots of different viruses, environmental pollutant, toxins, cleaning chemicals, people who work in salons with all the chemicals, those can be an issue. All of those have an impact on the liver and the endocrine system. So we have to think outside of sometimes what the like normal things might be. Sometimes it's more than that. So that's why I listed out some of these things. These are all affecting the liver and the mitochondria both. So each person is going to show up in different ways, but the good news is there are some things that we can do. We can support having the right micronutrients coming in, like some of those things we just talked about, high antioxidant foods. Some of them are listed here, like your greens, non-GMO, whole grains. I recommend like the more of an ancient grain that you can get, the less genetically modified, the better. So like einkorn or maybe like Ezekiel bread is great, those kinds of things. Whole grain, organic rice, brown rice, stuff like that. Things like your zucchini and eggplant, some citrus has high antioxidants. Herbs, apples are a great food to incorporate in. If you have blood sugar problems, put it with protein. We talked about bananas already. High antioxidant fruits, onions, and garlic, okay? Don't forget to add those in as fresh as possible. So I recommend using like a cheese grater or something like that, right? There's another name for it that is kind of similar that has small, and just grating it onto your meals, your eggs, your greens, your salad, your soups, your sauces, your meats, right? All those kinds of things. It can go with a lot. It can even go with like rice or quinoa, onion, garlic, ginger, turmeric. Use those as often as you can. You can try different combinations with different things. Mix it in with some olive oil and drizzle it on things, on just any meal almost, outside of like a sweet one. Um, your legumes, beans, uh, peas and things. Sushi and fish are tricky because sometimes sushi and fish can be high in parasites. Depending on where they came from, there can be heavy metals and things, how they were packaged, how they're processed. So as fresh as possible, or locally caught, more like northern Atlantic, northern Pacific are usually better. That the Gulf of Mexico, the lower Atlantic, lower Pacific are more polluted waters. So you want the fresher seafood from the northern seas, if you will. That's, to my understanding, those are going to be your cleanest, best options with anything moderation. Nuts and seeds, your olives and olive oil. We've talked about those. Okay. So those are going to be the things that are going to provide your polyphenols and your bioenergetic support for your mitochondria. Okay. Biogenesis. We want to support your mitochondria to repair themselves. That's going to promote your body to have less inflammation, better hormone balance, and what's called a better redox rate. Okay. So having a better redox rate means that when there is stress, when there is inflammation, when there was lack of sleep or junk food or whatever, your body is better able to repair and reset itself because the mitochondria can handle it. Things like age are a factor. If we're in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on, it's a little harder. So we have to do more oxidative support, more antioxidant support. Okay. We need to do more of these key things, regulating the nervous system. We've talked about that. Okay. Helping our mitochondria, our cellular repair, our restorative rest, and our nutrition. That's what we're talking about. When there's oxidative stress, we have inflammation. It's hard for our protein to actually be properly metabolized. So our body's not really using it much, and we have a lot more fat storage. When there's inflammation with the mitochondria, which is oxidative stress, it damages the DNA. It causes inflammation. It prevents our body from metabolizing and causes our body to produce more lipid storage, more fat storage. So this just kind of explains what's happening. That's going to cause less cellular energy. All of that we just said. ATP is our cellular energy. So we want to do everything that we can to improve the antioxidants, the things that are going to help our mitochondria and our nervous system to work together for balance. Over time, we can see lots of different diseases coming forward because of that mitochondria damage and inflammation. And it's always a combination of things, but you can see some of the things that can happen here. So those aren't always the things that happen. There's lots of different diseases that can come forward because basically when the DNA starts being damaged, the body is going to activate whatever genetic propensities for diseases are there, basically, when there's enough inflammation. So we talked about a lot of these already. These were in that other list for nervous system regulation, so you can see the overlap. Our green leafy vegetables, those were not in the other list, so they're in this one. I recommend arugula, romaine, lettuces, maybe a small amount of spinach mixed in. Spinach is good, but it can be heavy for the body to process. So it does well with other greens mixed together with your olive oil, with your citrus or apple cider vinegar, those kinds of things to help your body process it better. Garlic, ginger, turmeric, other green leafy things like your broccoli and cauliflower. Again, with things like your olive oil, your citrus, your garlic, onion, turmeric, ginger, those types of things. Fresh, fresh, fresh. A little bit of organic, farm fresh red meats. I'm sorry that the words on here are blurry, but at least you can see the pictures there. The farm fresh or organic meats, we don't want the hormones injected. We don't want the processed stuff that has dye in it and whatever, right? So you don't need that every day. For most women, about once a week is great. Maybe twice if you feel like you need it or you feel like you're on your cycle and you are, needing that iron and mineral support. 1 to 2 times a week is plenty. Everyone's a little different. Again, just like with the greens, your body absorbs more when you pair this with fresh garlic, ginger, turmeric, herbs like rosemary, oregano, thyme. Okay. You want to pair your meats with those fresh onions, the ginger, garlic, turmeric. All those things are going to help your body absorb more from your meats and metabolize it easier so it's not hard for your gut to process. Everyone's a little different on what that looks like, but generally, that's a good rule to go by. Okay. General information on your mitochondria here. We've talked about a lot of this, but this just gives you a nice idea of like what are mitochondria, what they do, what's in them, and all that. When we support those type of healthy mitochondria, we're going to support all these different areas. Okay. These things are all impacting your rest, your supplements, of course, which is why I do like that Rise lemonade one that has all the different aminos and things in there. Many of those things support our mitochondria. Pretty much 90% of what's in there is helping the mitochondria, as well as other areas. Exercise and movement are going to be helpful, right? We've talked about that. Even if you just do 1 minute or 2 minutes of stretching before bed, that's great. Walking is phenomenal. 5 to 10 minute walks in your day when you can, okay? Before or after lunch, before or after dinner are great times. Sunlight, especially your morning sunlight, the morning red light of the sun, or if you use a red light therapy of some kind, that is amazing for your mitochondria, okay? Use that, especially when you've been stressed, especially when it's been busy, or especially if you know that you've had some kind of inflammation from maybe being under the weather or lack of sleep or junk food or whatever it was, okay? Red light is going to help. Intermittent fasting, that's a whole other topic. It really depends on the person. It's not for everyone, but some people do well. So if you have questions, ask me later and I can talk to you about that. And of course, the right fuel, which we've talked about a lot of that, and staying away from the junk. We're going to stay away from the alcohols, too much caffeine, anything processed. Really, having clean air and water in our environment as much as possible, using the different purification, avoiding the things with a lot of additives in our foods, but even in your like shampoo, your soaps, your laundry stuff, your cleaning products, those kinds of things, it does impact your mitochondria, it does impact your cells. So those are things that we can talk about later if you have questions, but that's just something to keep in mind. I think a lot of us are already have done a lot of that, but these are the categories of nutrients that are going to be key for your mitochondria. And ding, 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 extra bonus. A lot of these are going to support your serotonin, your nervous system, and your hormone balance as well. The only thing that I often just remind is most of these things you're going to need to pair them with protein, especially, fruits and vegetables. A lot of those need to be eaten with some form of protein for most people. There's nuances, like some people with autoimmune or thyroid and things like that need to not have too much of your acidic things like the tomatoes or citrus and stuff like that. But it really is a person to person, case by case thing. So we can get into that later. And then of course you've got your CoQ10 enzymes, which a lot of these also have minerals, enzymes, proteins, and aminos. So these are some really great foods to incorporate in. And you know what? I'm going to send this one for you guys because I think this has some really great options to keep in mind and it can help to have like a vegetable. Have a have a visual available. Okay. We are going to wrap up, answer everyone's questions, make sure all of you guys have tools and strategies to start implementing for the next little bit until we meet again. So if you're watching the replay, then make sure you connect with any questions or support that you're needing. And until then, I will see you next time.